Hello everyone. Today we discuss the Fermat's theorem in the point of view of Gaussian integers. Myself, Mahesh S. Wavre, Head and Associate Professor, Department of Mathematics, Rajesh Shaw Mahavidyalaya, Latur. In the last video, we have discussed the ring of Gaussian integer and how it comes a Euclidean ring. Once any ring is an Euclidean ring, then it is always a principal ideal ring. Its ideal is always principal. It has always unit element. We can find greatest common divisor of any two non-zero element in it, and then after we can discuss what are the prime elements of that Euclidean ring. So first we discuss what is the prime element or prime number in the Euclidean ring. The number pi is said to be prime if pi has the factorization in all the way. If pi is written as a into p, then here a has to be unit or b has to be unit. One of them has to be unit. Then and then pi is said to be prime element of that Euclidean ring. What do you mean by unit element? Unit means the invertible element. So since any ring, Euclidean ring has unit element always. Today we have to prove the Fermat's theorem, which belongs to the number theory. Now one might have the questions that how the ring theory has to do with the number theory. Yes, there is connection between ring theory to number theory via this ring of Gaussian integers. So before proving that Fermat's theorem, we have to look for two basic results. This is the first results. First we understand this statement. Your p is a prime integer, that is prime element of the ring, and suppose that for some c prime to p. What do you mean by c prime to p? C prime to p means the greatest common divisor of c and p is the unit element of that ring. And also one more condition is given, that if there exist x and y integers such that x square plus y square is c into p, then the p always written as into this form. We can take one counter example for this. If c is your 4, p is 5, then it has pattern 16 plus 4. We know the product of 4 into 5 is 20, and 20 can be written as sum of square of two numbers, that is 16 and 4. Now this 4 and 5 are really prime, so one condition is hold, and 4 into 5 can be written as the sum of square of these two integers. That means this 5 also has this pattern. What is the pattern of 5? The pattern of 5 is 4 plus 1, it is 2 square plus 1, and this holds for every satisfying this. X square plus y square equal to cp, and c and p are related prime, and p is any prime integer. Now we'll start the proof of this. We know that the set of Gaussian integer is an Euclidean ring. The notationally, this is the ring of Gaussian integer, and Z is also Euclidean ring. But one can carefully see that Z is a subset of Zi. That means Z can be treated as subring of Zi. And one must have important question in mind. If any element, if P is a prime element of subring, then can it be prime element of ring satisfying this condition? That we have to think, that we have to check, and this statement is not true. If the P is prime element of Z satisfying your given condition x square plus y square equal to Cp, and C and P are related prime, then it cannot be prime element of the ring of Gaussian integer Zi. This is the first important part that we have to verify here. On contrary, we suppose that the integer p is also prime in the ring of Gaussian integer, and this is the given condition. Cp is x square plus y square, and c and p are, don't forget that c and p are related prime. Now this x square plus y square can be written as this format, x plus psi y into x minus psi y, but since p is prime, P divides Cp, this P divides Cp, and value of Cp is x plus I by x minus I by, and we assume that P is prime in Zi, so P has to divide either x plus I by or x minus I by. So first upon we assume that P divides x plus I by. What it means? X plus I by can be written as some element of Zi into P. Here it is given. Then by equality of two numbers in Zi, the real part of this side is x and that side real part is P into U, and imaginary part of one other side is P into V, and the right hand side is P into V. So x equal to Pu, y equal to Pv implies x minus Iy is P into U minus Ib. What it implies? P also divides x minus Iy. So you have verified that if P divides x plus Iy, then P has to divide x minus Iy. Means P divide both x plus Iy as well as x minus Iy. So this statement implies that P square divides the product of these two. What is the product of these two? Product of these two is x square plus y square. That is P square divides Cp. As P is common and P is prime, one can easily say that P divides C. And this is the contradiction to your statement that P and C are related prime. So what we assume? P is also prime element of Zi. This is not true. P in this case, P has to be composite number. What is the other case? Suppose P divides x minus Iy. Then similarly we can show that P divides x plus Iy, and we get contradiction to the same thing. Means whenever P divides x plus Iy or P divides x minus Iy, P has to be composite element of this Gaussian integer Zi. That is explained here. Here it is explained. So we have proved that it is not necessary that if P is a prime in Z, it is not necessarily prime in Zi. But satisfying this condition, x square plus y square equal to Cp and C are related prime, then in that case P has to be composite number. Cp is a composite element of Zi. And what do you mean by composite element? You know the prime element definition. From that we can construct composite element. P is composite means P can be expressed as product of two non-units, and this is the two non-units, A plus Ib and C minus C plus Id. These are the two non-units. These are two non-units means their d function value must be different from 1. That is, their d value is not equal to 1. What is d value? It is A plus Ib into A minus Ib, that is A square plus B square. So being a non-unit, their d value is different from 1. This statement you have to keep in mind. And observe that your P is integer, purely integer, imaginary part is 0 there. So conjugate of P has to be P. And as per the rule, P into P bar has to be P square, and here P into P bar is calculated. Finally you get P square as A square plus B square into C square plus D square. What it implies? P square upon A square plus B square is C square plus D square, or P square upon C square plus D square is A square plus B square. Means A square plus B square divides P square, and C square plus D square divides P square. Keep in mind this statement for further reference. And we suppose that A square, we suppose that this A square plus B square divides P square, and P being a prime integer. So being a prime, P being prime, what should the value of A square plus B square? The number divisible to P square is either it is 1, either it is P or P square, because P is prime. Here A square plus B square value has to be 1, this value has to be P, or this value has to be P square. These are the only three possibilities because P is prime integer. So what will happen if A square plus B square is 1, if A square plus B square is 1, It is not the case because a plus ib is non-unit, so a square b square is different from 1, so this case is cancelled. What will happen if a square plus b square is p square? If a square plus b square is p square, then your other part c square plus d square becomes 1, and this will get contradiction to c plus id as non-unit. Because it is non-unit, so its value has to be different from 1, so these two possibilities are cancelled, so this is the remaining. So that's why p is written as a square plus b square. In the similar manner, we can show that if c square plus d square divide p square, then c square plus d square is p. It is neither 1 nor p square, in the same manner. And thus we have proved that if your prime number has this pattern with c and p has greatest common divisor in it, then this p is always written as this form. There exist two integers a and b such that p equal to a square plus b square. This part has been proved, and this plays crucial role in the proving the Fermat's theorem. That's why we have taken this result. Now next result from number theory. Before proving this result, we must know the result from number theory, that if a p is a prime integer, then p minus 1 factorial is always congruous to minus 1 modulo p. If p is a prime number, then p minus 1 factorial is always congruous to minus 1 modulo p. One can verify it by counter example. This theorem is well-known theorem. It is known as Wilson's theorem. We have to solve. Why I am taking this? We have to solve the congruence relation here. See here, p is a prime number of the form 4n plus 1. Then we can solve this congruence. You know the congruence. X square is congruous to minus 1 modulo p, means p divides x square plus y square, x square plus 1. That means x square plus 1 has a pattern some constant into p. Constant means that quotient factor. Now before proving this, we also look the example. Consider the prime number of the form 4n plus 1. What is this pattern? 3 into 4 plus 1. Now this solution we can calculate manually by taking the x value as 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 into 6. This is the solution. Now actually this value of x is 720. 6 factorial is 720. So you have taken x here as 720, which is congruous to 5 modulo 13. P is 13 here, which is congruous to 5 modulo 13. So what is x square? X square is congruous to minus 1. In this case it is x square is congruous to 25 modulo 13, and 25 modulo 13 is congruous to minus 1 modulo p. So when p is 13, the solution is 5. We can find the solution. This is counter example. You have to verify that every prime number who has this form, then we can always solve this congruence. Let us see the proof of this result. And one thing also I want to tell, that when you apply division algorithm on 4, every number has the pattern. When you divide by 4, you get remainder 0. When you divide it by 4, you get remainder 1, you get remainder 2, you get remainder 3. Means you have the number of the pattern 4n, 4n plus 1, 4n plus 2, and 4n plus 3. This 4n is composite number, 4n plus 2 is also composite number because they are even number, and these two are the numbers 4n plus 1 and 4n plus 3. Due to this division algorithm on 4, every prime number has only these two patterns, either it is 4n plus 1 or 4n plus 3 format. For division algorithm, when you take d equal to 4. So but I am not saying that any number of this form is prime number. Converse of this statement is not true. It is not true. Means 4n plus 1 9. 9 is odd number. It is not a prime. It has a pattern 4n plus 1. Prime can be categorized into two these numbers. That you keep in mind. Now see, given that P is 4n plus 1, multiple of 4 plus 1 pattern. And this is your target. You have to find X satisfying this. Such type of congress may not have unique solutions, but at least x1 x we can find. And we use the logic of the previous example. What you did in that case, your P is 13 and you have chosen x as 6 factorial, that is P minus 1 divided by 2. So I choose x as P minus 1 upon 2 factorial, and keep in mind P minus 1 is also 4n. When you divide it by 2, what it becomes? P minus 1 upon 2 becomes 2n. So it is even number. Keep in mind this even number means 1 2 3 up to minus P minus 1. These are the even numbers. So just adjust the minus sign. The same x can be written as this. Minus also occurs even number of times. Also use the fact that P minus k is congruous to minus k modulo P. Now I am taking the square. Here I write x and here also it is same x. This is just adjustment. And now instead of this minus 1 I write P minus 1. Instead of this minus 2 I write P minus 2. And instead of this P minus 1 by 2 minus I write P minus of that. And this is the calculations. X square is 1 up to P minus 1 by 2, P minus 1, P minus 2, and minus P. I have to write here P minus 1 upon 2. And finally when you calculate it becomes P minus 1 factorial modulo P. And as earlier I explained what is Wilson's theorem. Due to Wilson's theorem, this P minus 1 factorial is always congruous to minus 1 modulo P, and that X is the solution due to Wilson's theorem. Now we discuss the important Fermat's theorem. We have to apply these two results. We have to consider one pattern type prime numbers. P is the prime number of this form 4n plus 1. Means what are the prime numbers of this form? 5 is the prime number of this form. 7 is prime number but it is not of this pattern. 11 is prime number but it is not of this pattern. Next prime number is 17. 17 has same pattern. Who is the next? One can find easily. The next prime number is 29. There may be one more. 19 is prime number, 23 is prime number but not of this pattern, and lastly 29, and so on. You can get calculated. If prime number has this pattern 4n plus 1, then it is always sum of square of two integers. So please make correction of this integer. It must be integer. So 5 has a pattern 1 plus 4, 1 square plus 2 square. 17 has a pattern 16 plus 1, 4 square plus 1. What is the pattern of 29? 29's pattern is 25 plus 4. But in general we have to prove this. Is just for the example, but in general we have to prove this. Now earlier two results we are going to apply here. What is the first result? When your P is a prime number of the form 4n plus 1 and x square plus y square is Cp. In the first result it is any pattern prime number. X square plus y square is equal to Cp, and P is a prime integer and C and P are related to prime, implies P has a pattern a square plus b square. That statement we are going to verify here. But here this results earlier result in the congruence, that if P is a prime number of the form 4n plus 1, then we have solution for this. We have solution for this. X square is congruous to minus 1 modulo p. It means p divides x square minus 1, that is x square plus 1. What it means? X square plus 1 has a pattern c into p. Suppose c number comes when you divide p to x square plus 1, we get dash c. Here our target is to prove that c and p are related prime. This is already x square plus y square format. Only we want to prove that c and p are related prime. Once you prove that c and p are related prime, then directly you can say that p has a pattern a square plus b square. So this is the major target, that c and p are related prime. Look to what values of x we can choose. Since you are taking the elements when taking the remainder when divided by p, your x has to be choice between, your choice of x is this. Coming 0 means p is, so this is your possible. We can restrict further the size of x. Look, we can see in the next slide. I repeat once again. See, this p is a prime number of the form 4n plus 1. Then by earlier result there exists x such that x square is congruous to minus 1 modulo p. Since we only need to use the remainder of x, keep in mind, we only need to use the remainder of x on division by p. The x can be chosen between these. I explained earlier this. Here we can restrict the size of x even further by p by 2. Here by p by 2, suppose in case if your x is greater than this, what will happen? You can take, instead of x, y equal to p minus x. See here, instead of x we can take y equal to p minus x, so that p minus x will be the less than or equal to p by 2, means y is less than or equal to p by 2. So just calculate the y square. Y square means p minus x square. This is the square of p minus x square, and p square congruous to p will be 0, 2p congruous to p will be 0, so finally it will be x square. So y square is congruous to x square, and x square is congruous to minus 1 modulo p. So that's why we can restrict the size of x here. If x is not satisfying that conditions, then we can take this as x. So without loss of generality, we assume that x has this size. This is very important statement here. This we have to verify first to show how p and c are related prime. So the size of x is less than or equal to p by 2 implies x square is congruous to minus 1 modulo p, that is p divides x square plus 1, that is x square plus 1 equal to c into p. And if GCD of c and p is 1, then we are through. But we want to check that GCD. So what is value of CP? CP is x square plus 1. What is x square? X square has to be less than or equal to p square by 2 square, that is 4. So p square by 4 plus 1, this value is always less than p square. So CP is always strictly less than the p square. That means c is less than p. And once c is less than any prime element, means p doesn't divide c, and that's why GCD of c and p is 1. So we have shown that there exist x and 1. This 1 is particular number. We see that c into p is x square plus 1, and c and p are related prime. Then due to first result, we can see there exists integer a and b such that p equal to a square plus b square. Hence Fermat's theorem is true. And we have used the concept of ring of Gaussian integers here to prove this result. One more example, most important example was skip in the last lecture. So at the time being, we can discuss this example here. So this example says that if a plus bi is not unit, then prove that a square plus b square is strictly greater than 1. Not unit means what? it is not invertible element, it is a non-zero. Non-unit means non-zero, non-invertible element. Now on this Gaussian integer we have defined the function from this non-zero number to the whole number. By what definition? D of x as x into x bar. If x is a plus ib, so d of a plus ib will be a plus ib into a minus ib, that is d of a plus ib is a square plus b square. And due to this Euclidean function, this d value is always whole number. Whole number means it is either 0 or natural number. So look at this, if d value of a plus ib, that is a square plus b square, becomes 0, then what it implies? That number has to be compulsory 0. Next, if d value of a plus ib is 1, that is a square plus b square is 1, then clearly a plus ib is unit of zi. We know those elements whose d value is equal to d value of multiple identity, that is 1, is always unit element. And it is known to us that a plus ib is non-unit. Once it is non-unit, it is neither 0 nor 1. What it should be? It should be greater than 1, because it is neither 0 nor 1. And what is d of a plus ib? It is a square plus b square. So in this way, if a plus ib is non-unit, then a square plus b square is strictly greater than 1. If it is unit, it has to be 1, and we do not assign value to 0. So we can see the further exercises from the book of First 10 Topics in Algebra, chapter number 3, and this completes the topic ring of Gaussian integer. If any questions, put in the comment. If you like this video, subscribe the channel and share the video as many to the needy students. And thanks for listening the whole part. Thank you.